For too many years, leaders have been avoiding the weeds. Well, it's time to get into the weeds. In the last episode, I talked to you about the death of the workplace norms, basic etiquette, common sense, professionalism, whatever you want to call it. And let's stop pretending that people don't see it. The workplace has become weird. People don't communicate, nobody takes initiative, everybody is offended by everything. Managers are scared to manage, employees are confused about expectations, and basic professionalism now looks like going above and beyond. But this episode is not going to be me sitting here crying about how terrible employees are, because leaders, you have a choice. You can keep complaining to your spouse, your friends, your management team, and to Reddit about how dumb your employees are, or you can do something about it. Today, I'm going to tell you exactly where to start. Welcome to Let's Get Rash. This is the podcast that says what your boss won't and what your employees wish they could. Work sucks today because leadership sucks and no one wants to say it out loud. I'm Jessica, a former insider turned leadership coach and the author of Let's Get Rash about leadership. I'm not here to be nice, I'm here to be real. Let's get rash about it. If you have not listened to episode 16 yet, the episode that came out right before this one, it's called You Think It's Obvious, It's Not, the Death of Workplace Conduct. Go listen to that first. In that episode, I listed a handful of things that frustrate the hell out of employers about employees today. Things that might seem incredibly obvious to half of the world, but no longer obvious to the other half. There are a lot of reasons why that has happened, but that's not what this episode is about. This episode is about how we're going to fix it. Now, I already know that some of you are probably going to be irritated by this episode. You're probably going to be saying things like, that's ridiculous, I'm not doing that. They should already know this stuff. Okay, but just stick with me for a minute, because what exactly do you have to lose at this point? Look, workplace etiquette is dead. The universal understanding of what is considered professional does not exist anymore. And if you don't believe me, invite 10 random people over to your house tonight and tell them to dress business casual. Let's see what shows up at your front door. So, it's time for a reset. Every boss needs to clearly define their own expectations, their own personal standards, and I mean clearly, spell it out. I know that employees hate being compared to children, but honestly, the parent-child relationship is probably the closest comparison to the employee-employer relationship that I can find. Imagine taking in a couple of kids from a completely different household and inviting them to live in yours, but then never clearly defining the rules of your home. You just assume that they should already know them because, well, it's obvious. But today, every house is different. One house expects everyone at the table at a set dinner time. Another lets kids eat whenever, wherever, and whatever they want. One house has no limits on screen time. Another has strict rules and zero screen time ever. One house assigns chores as part of their daily responsibility. Another believes kids shouldn't have assigned work at all because that's abuse. Now imagine handing these kids a giant packet of paperwork to sign about your house rules, but never actually explaining the day-to-day expectations that really matter. Then, the rules that you do give them are really vague and subjective. Things like, take pride in your space. Okay, but what does that even mean? To one kid, it means hang up a few posters on the wall and call it a day while there's a disaster zone on the floor of clothes and garbage and all kinds of crap. To another kid, it means something completely different. It means making the bed, putting things away, keeping it organized, actually maintaining it. See, same instruction, two totally different interpretations. Or maybe one of the rules is be a team player. Okay, but what does that actually look like? One kid is going to think that it means I'll help someone if they ask me directly, but otherwise I'm going to do my own thing. Another kid thinks it means if I see something that needs done, I jump in without being told. Another kid thinks it just means don't argue too much when someone tells you what to do. See, same rule, 3 completely different behaviors. So now you're standing in the kitchen, annoyed, telling your spouse, I don't get it. How do they not get this? It's so obvious. But hold on. These kids came from completely different environments than your house. Why would you ever assume that your standards are automatically theirs? And years ago, yes, they were. There were more universal expectations being reinforced everywhere, at school, at home, in public, by neighbors, by coaches, by grandparents. But sadly, those universal standards mostly have died too. And if you need proof of that, try correcting some kid that's not yours. You're probably going to hear something like this. You're not my mom or my dad. And depending on the kid, you might even be told to F off. So why do we pretend that the workplace is somehow immune to this? I'm sorry, but we're at the point where this stuff does need to be spelled out. So let's do it. The reason for the death of the workplace etiquette is because there's also no shared standard of expectations anymore. Every boss has their own version of how things need to be done, but most of it lives in their head. It's never clearly defined, never written out in a way that actually means something, and never, ever consistently reinforced. So what you end up with is a workplace where the rule book is invisible. The only people who know it are the boss's inner circle, usually the people that they vent to after work with the classic, "You're not going to believe this shit that happened today at work." So it's time for you to host your own etiquette training. We're going to call it the Workplace Reset. You need to have a meeting, document your expectations, and have employees sign off on them. So grab a box of donuts and call the meeting. If you're virtual, you can make a video, make it funny, make it creative, make it your own. I've put a lot of thought into this subject, and I actually made an etiquette training for you, like a free download, but I've decided to scrap it because the reality is everyone has their own version of what acceptable looks like today. My version is not going to be your version. This would be a whole hell of a lot easier if we could just get on the same page about expectations. But we're not there, not even close. So what that means is you don't get to rely on some universal standard. You have to define it yourself, clearly, on purpose. And then you have to reinforce it over and over again. And even then, it doesn't stop there, because inside your own company, you can have one manager who has their own set of expectations and another manager who operates completely opposite. Same company, same employees, two different rule books. And that's where things get really messy, because employees aren't just dealing with the company's expectations. They're trying to figure out which manager's expectations they're supposed to be following today. For this exercise, we're going to go through some top complaints from employers, and I'm going to tell you how to address each one in your own workplace reset. The first one is employees wait to be told everything, or otherwise known as nobody goes above and beyond anymore. This is the number one complaint from employers across the board. Okay, but first, and don't worry, I'm not going to drone on about this forever, but you need to ask yourself something. Does your company even allow space for people to go above and beyond anymore? Have their jobs become so streamlined, so scripted, so boxed in that employees are afraid to make a move without permission? Because if that's the case, you have to address that first. See, you cannot complain that nobody takes initiative while also creating an environment where initiative gets people in trouble. Then comes the next problem. Most employers say they want people to go above and beyond, but they never actually define what that means to them. And there is where everything falls apart. Because what you think above and beyond looks like might be completely different than what your employee thinks it looks like. In that workplace reset meeting, you need to be painfully specific. Painfully. You need to give examples, real ones. If you've seen someone in your company go above and beyond, use them as an example. Use that as the example. And if you've seen the opposite, someone doing the bare minimum or missing the mark, use that too. Not the person, but the situation. Before you can do that, though, you need to ask your team, what do they think going above and beyond means? And I promise you, the answers are going to shock the hell right out of you. A lot of people are going to describe things that are just the job. To add salt to the wound, there are tons of articles and lists online from major job sites directed to employees telling them what above and beyond looks like. They say things like this: help a new employee without acting annoyed. Ask questions to understand your job. Take ownership of mistakes. Admit when you don't know something. Follow through with reminders. Or be polite to customers. Wow, pretty amazing stuff, huh? Isn't that just doing your job? If you're a boss, I'm guessing that's not what you mean when you say going above and beyond, is it? So do you see the issue? Because that is not what I think it means either. For me, it's seeing something broken in the workplace and actually stepping in to improve it without being asked. It's noticing a problem and not just reporting it, but helping solve it. It's thinking about how to make the business better, not just how to complete your tasks. It can look like picking up trash in the parking lot, even though you didn't put it there. It can look like donating something from your house that you weren't using because it helps the team. It can look like using your own network to create connections or bring in opportunities for the business. It can look like promoting the company in your personal circles because you actually believe in the company. It can look like bringing ideas forward on your own time. And sometimes it even looks like stepping in after hours when something matters and you're willing to help get it across the line. That's the version of above and beyond that I'm always talking about. Not just doing the job, but treating the workplace like something you have a hand in actually improving. See, if you don't define this clearly in your own company, people will fill in the blanks themselves, and most of them will assume they're already doing it. One person's thinking, I always go above and beyond. I show up on time. I answer my emails. I say good morning. So do not leave this vague. Don't leave it assumed. Spell it out, kindergarten style, specifically in real terms built around your business. The next complaint from bosses is employees do not communicate proactively. Bosses are frustrated when employees wait till the last possible moment to mention that they missed a deadline or that they need time off or they do not understand an assignment. For example, an employee knows that they need Friday afternoon off, but they wait till Friday morning to mention it. Before we move into the rest of the communication issues, I need to address that one first. When it comes to last-minute leave requests, let's do a little role play. Hi, boss. Sorry for the late notice, but I would like to take this afternoon off. Hello, employee. No, I'm sorry, that's not possible today. Do you see how simple that was? I'm so sick of bosses acting like they don't control this. You do. It's your schedule. Some questions can be answered with no. It's pretty easy. So now let's talk about the legitimate communication issues. Maybe an employee gets confused on one of their assignments on Tuesday morning, but instead of asking questions, they do it wrong, and then they tell the boss Friday afternoon when the deadline is already blown. Or maybe an employee sees that inventory is running low, or they notice that there's a customer issue brewing, or they realize there's a mistake that was made. But they say nothing until the situation becomes a full disaster. See, a lot of bosses constantly complain that employees sit on information instead of communicating early enough for anyone to actually help solve the problem. So a lot of employers feel like they're spending more time hunting down updates than actually leading. We've all heard someone in leadership say this line, "Why am I just now hearing about this?" So it's time to spell it out in your workplace reset. You could say something like this. If you're confused on a project for more than 15 minutes, I expect you to ask for clarification. You could say, if you make a mistake, you need to tell me immediately. I care more about honesty than I do perfection. You could say, if a customer is escalating, I need to know before they become a Google review. But you do have to stop rewarding silence accidentally. A lot of employers unknowingly create this problem themselves. For example, the employee who does communicate early on will usually get lectured for 20 minutes, but the employee who hides the issue gets an eye roll and a quick, okay. The employee who asks questions gets treated like a burden, and then the employee who stays quiet, they get left alone. Some employees genuinely just do not have strong communication habits yet. So we can sit around and gripe about the reality, or we can train for the reality that we actually have sitting in front of us right now. The next complaint from bosses is this. Employees treat feedback like personal attacks. Employers say that simple corrections now turn into emotional reactions, defensiveness, shutting down, crying, arguing, or immediately talking about quitting. Bosses feel like they cannot coach people without walking on eggshells. I say, who cares? Why do we care so much about how the employee receives this information? If this is one of your complaints, that's a you problem. Imagine this with kids. And some people, well, they actually do this. Imagine this issue in your own home with a 2-year-old. You tell the 2-year-old, hey, it's time for bed. Oh no, they're crying, they're screaming, they're throwing a tantrum, they're even screaming they hate you. Then you come to the table with this as a serious issue in a professional setting, like you're some kind of victim. I don't know what to do. My toddler won't take direction. So now what? Bedtimes are up to them? Or let's pretend that you're a teacher, which honestly, you are if you're a leader. You should be a teacher. But let's say you're teaching a grade school class. You ask the class, hey, does anybody, raise your hand if you know how to spell the word job? Uh-oh, super sensitive Billy is raising his hand. Now, Billy is known for crying and throwing a full-fledged fit anytime he gets something wrong. So you immediately scan the room, hoping literally anybody else will be there to answer it because you already know where this is headed. Damn it, nobody else has their hand up. Okay, Billy, how do you spell the word job? Billy arrogantly says, job. G-E-O-Q, job. Well, not only is it wrong, it's impressively wrong. Somehow he managed to get a Q involved, which is the least used letter in the English language. So you give Billy a confused look and you say, no, Billy, that's not how you spell job, buddy. Now Billy is in a full-fledged meltdown. He's got tears streaming down his face, he's hyperventilating, passionately defending why the letter Q should be included, like he's presenting some groundbreaking research. Now you rush over to calm him down. See, spelling words is no longer the priority. Protecting feelings is. Truth be told, the protection of the feelings are more about yours and less about Billy's. You like to be liked, and that's the issue. So eventually, you just give in. You know what, Billy? Maybe there is a Q in the letter job. If that's how you feel it should be spelled, then that's your truth. Listen, if an employee threatens to quit the second that they get corrected, sounds like a pretty big victory to me. They just saved you months of future headache. Your response should be, sounds good. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Although I do not sympathize with leaders on this complaint, I understand why it bothers them, because it works. See, you're either being manipulated or you're dealing with a very immature employee. Either way, this should not shake you up at all, not even a little bit. Now, yes, before everybody loses their minds, sometimes the employee is right. Maybe your feedback is contradictory. Maybe you let other employees get away with the same behavior. Maybe you're the hypocrite. That absolutely happens. But it's pretty easy to spot because the biggest sign of that is when an employee doesn't say anything. When they're not emotional at all, they're calm. But they have this attitude on their face and it says, are you frickin' serious right now? But for a second, let's assume the employer is 100% correct in their feedback. Who cares how the employee reacts? Stop caring about this. Why are we building an entire management style around emotional reactions to basic corrections? If someone shuts down, cries, threatens to quit, gets defensive, or acts like feedback is abuse, that, my friend, is manipulation in the finest form. And I'm going to get rash with you here. This shouldn't even be a part of your employee reset meeting. Stop making employees carry the burden of your fear of conflict. This is not for them to fix. This is for you to man up and learn how to lead through uncomfortable conversations without folding every time someone gets emotional. Oh, and bosses who keep bringing this up as some legitimate issue, you're kind of exposing yourself without even realizing it. If this is one of your biggest concerns, it says more about your ability to handle pushback than it does about your employees. The next complaint from employers right now is that employees are expecting flexibility, but they don't reciprocate. Managers and bosses are saying things like, employees expect unlimited understanding for their own schedule changes, their mental exhaustion, their family issues, or their emergencies, but then they won't stay 15 minutes late when the business actually needs their help. Well, that is a pretty valid complaint from employers. A lot of employees today do expect lots of leeway for personal issues. I've worked with these people over the years. You know, the ones that think it's the boss's job to bend over backwards for every situation, but they're also the first to say, that's not in my job description, when they're asked to do something outside of the norm. So what can employers do about this? Well, first, you can stop being so flexible. I have to tell you from the employee standpoint, it's really frustrating to give your all and then watch your coworkers get treated differently because of their personal situations. I know this one's going to rub people the wrong way, but I'm not going to hold back because it's true. When did it become the employer's problem that someone's kids need to be dropped off at school an hour after their shift starts? Or that they have a scout meeting tonight? Or that it's their mother-in-law's brother's wife's cousin who's in the hospital again? You know what I'm saying? Then, in a twist of comic relief, those same people are the first to push for raises, for promotions, and a lot of the time, it actually works. That's the squeaky wheel getting the oil dynamic. It's nice when employers are flexible, but expecting unlimited flexibility is not realistic. Right now, there are a lot of employers extending grace and flexibility and not getting the same courtesy back when it actually matters. That imbalance is frustrating for everyone involved. So what should the employers do? First, stop overcorrecting into constant flexibility. If it's being taken advantage of, stop and reset your expectations with your team. Clarity beats resentment every single time. Oh, and promotions? Those should go to people who shine. Look, the gist is, whatever is annoying you about your staff, whatever they're doing wrong, whatever common sense thing that they do not seem to understand, this is your time. This is your chance to finally get it on the table. For too many years, leaders have been avoiding the weeds. Well, it's time to get into the weeds. We are long past the point where vague references work. Passive-aggressive remarks aren't working either. Look, professionalism is not clear instruction. Communicate better is not clear instruction. Take initiative means something different to every single person in the room, so spell it out, literally. Make a list of everything that aggravates you about your team. Grab your employee evaluations or your reviews. If you don't have one, I have a free one that you can download at rashlead.com/free. Then go through every single bullet point and explain exactly what you're grading people on. If you're irritated because your employees don't respond to emails fast enough, stop acting like the expectation is magically understood. Define it. You will respond to all emails by the end of the business day, or put a time limit on it. I know that's stupid, but you have to do it. If communication sucks, define what good communication looks like. If they seem entitled about leave, explain the process and expectation around communication and coverage. If they disappear during the day, explain availability expectations. You've got to break down all these subjective rules, because right now a lot of employers are operating off of assumptions, while employees are operating off of a whole nother level. Change your mindset. Stop assuming that people already know all the basic stuff. Your safest bet right now is to assume they don't know anything. And the most important part of all of this, once you complete your workplace reset, now you actually have something to hold people accountable to. Because if expectations have been clearly explained, reviewed, written down, trained on, and repeated, and someone still refuses to follow along, now you reprimand. Now you formally counsel. Now it's accountability, not confusion. And moving forward, instead of asking the same old boring job interview questions that everybody else asks, take all these frustrations that you have and build your questions around them. Ditch the old routine and try to get a mutual understanding of language. You could ask things like, have you ever worked for a micromanager? Give me examples of how they micromanaged. Get them to describe it. Don't just assume that you share the same definition of words like micromanaging or flexibility or communication. And don't stop there. Ask them for exact details of what above and beyond actually means to them. Not vague answers, but specific behaviors. Ask them to tell you about a workplace rule that they thought was unfair. Ask them if they've ever disagreed with a company policy or procedure when dealing with a customer or client, and why. And ask them this. Ask them, what would make you say, that's not in my job description? See, the goal is to get clear on definitions before you ever try to manage them. Oh, and while you're doing your workplace reset, can you also explain to people how to merge onto the freeway? I'm convinced that driver's ed teachers, they also got tired of hearing people like Billy cry, so they just gave in. Don't worry, Billy. When you get on the freeway, everybody else will just move for you. And now we're all paying that price. You know, people who think their blinker means, I want that lane, get out of my way. Then you also have the zipper lane psychopaths. You know, where the entire point is to use both lanes and merge at the end, but most people are like, hey, your lane ended, F you, I'll kill us both before I let you in here. And don't even get me started on the left lane campers. Hey, if cars are stacked up behind you and people are passing you on the right, you are the problem. See, again, basic expectations, basic rules, policies, all subjective, and accountability became toxic. Even in driving, we get to speak our own truths. I hope this has opened your eyes to the disconnect between what people think things mean and what they actually mean. Think about all the things that we say in business. You assume it means one thing. Your employees, well, they're hearing something totally different. Try this out at your dinner table. Ask your friends, your family, what they think these phrases actually mean. You'll probably be surprised at how different the answers are, even regardless of their age. This isn't just a small gap anymore. It's becoming an epidemic. Forget the branded Christmas gifts this year. Let's start by giving out dictionaries. And while I have you here, can I talk to you guys about something that really bothers me? Since launching Rash Leadership Development and this podcast, I keep hearing things like this. All the stuff that you're talking about, Jessica, that's management, not leadership. Which is where I usually roll my eyes. Leadership is for bigwigs, dummy. Now, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole here, but because of figurehead leadership, most managers have been stripped of actually managing their people. So, all the things that used to be the management's responsibility, they got pushed upward. And guess who's doing it now? That's right, the bigwigs, leadership. The people at the top. So the next time someone tells you their title, something that used to carry a bunch of weight, don't overthink it. Just understand a lot of what we call leadership today is just management wearing a different name. See, that's not really the point that I'm trying to make here, but yeah, it kind of kills the argument, doesn't it? For fun, I looked up the meaning of leadership. Guess what? You'll never believe it. It's also become subjective. Isn't that wonderful? It's another one of those choose your own meaning words. The internet says this. Leadership doesn't have one single universally agreed upon definition. Well, it does. You just have to use an old school dictionary. Hey, Webster, what does it say? Well, it says leadership is the action of leading, which then sends you on to leader. So what is a leader? A leader is a person who rules or guides or inspires others. Sure sounds an awful lot like a boss to me, but hey, what do I know? I had a boss once who loved leadership conferences. Absolutely loved them. Traveled all over the country for them. This person was also a true micromanager, which meant that my entire job basically was on hold while waiting for them to, get back. But the first time that they went to one, I was actually excited. And I remember I thought, oh, yes, this is it. Maybe they're going to come back better. This is going to be a much better workplace. I still remember when they returned, I asked how the conference was. And the answer was basically this. It was amazing. I met so many important people. Then came a big long list of VIPs that they saw, the executives that they networked, the fancy dinners, the motivational speakers, and don't forget about the new inspirational quote at the bottom of their email signature. So I asked, did any of the speakers talk about managing people? My boss looked at me like I just asked the most ridiculous question ever. No, that's not what it was for. It's a leadership conference, Jessica. It's for entrepreneurs. Of course. How dumb of me. I remember just sitting there feeling so incredibly disappointed. Like, this was not about learning how to lead people better. This was an ego event, a networking party with lanyards. Look, I'm sick of it all. Everybody complains about the exact same workplace problems, but nobody wants to try anything different. Nobody wants to fix it. They just want another conference, another buzzword, another LinkedIn post about leadership from someone who hasn't spoken to the frontline employees in 5 years. See, the word leader has been hijacked. It's become theater. It's turned into something that people say to sound important. Honestly, it's kind of taken on a whole new life. And it doesn't help anyone anymore. We've made leadership so abstract that nobody recognizes that it's missing. I'm a leader. I'm a born leader. I've always been a leader. Even as a kid, I had a lemonade stand. I was just a born leader. I'm a leader of my hiking group. I'm a leader of my book club. I'm the leader of my family. Cool. See, we use leadership more at home than we do at work today. At work, we've separated leadership and management. Now they're two completely different jobs, when in reality, most workplaces are falling apart because nobody's doing the basic versions of both of those. Leadership got turned into vision, inspiration, and quotes. Just real gag-worthy garbage, if you ask me. Management is now just paperwork and reminders. See, real leadership doesn't need a label. It shows up in how people are treated, how standards are held, and what actually gets done when things get uncomfortable. So you can call it whatever the hell you want, but employees are begging for it. You just have to be willing to define it, to write it down, and to enforce it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to this episode of Let's Get Rash. Please like, subscribe, comment, GIF, all those types of things. Let me know what you think. And truly, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate your support more than I can ever put into words. Have a great day.